an audience. This is definitely my biggest yet. I actually found out last night that ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest on this stage. So magical things have happened. But actually, I want to take us away from the magic of these shiny new AI products today and bring us back down to earth by really focusing on what Danny was saying. So how are people actually responding to these products? And what are the challenges we face? But also hopefully bringing in a positive note of what we can do to tackle these challenges and actually a lot of barriers that we've seen ourselves. So quick intro, I'm Hannah Beresford. I'm a design research lead at Deloitte Digital. And I've been leading on the research and design of a series of conversational AI agents that we're developing at the firm. And I just wanted to bring to you my learnings in this space, which has been really quite different from how I've known UX traditionally, both working with the product team itself, but also how people are responding to these new, non-linear, not predetermined experiences. So what are we going to cover specifically? First of all, setting the scene, what we've been developing at Deloitte and the big ambitions that we've had. Then what we found, spoiler alert, it's not a pretty picture. This is based on insights with interviews of over 100 people now. It's testing that we're doing on an ongoing basis, and it's been a very eye-opening experience for me. Thirdly, what we can actually do about it. So our learnings and what we're doing in the firm to try and encourage adoption. And then finally, the power of curiosity. I think my dad would be proud that I'm mentioning curiosity here on the stage today. It's something that he's always instilled in me as just the key to unlocking opportunities in life generally. But I think it very much applies to this new world of Gen AI as well. It's something my colleague Artie and I have been discussing a lot recently. He's in the audience here today. Cool, so setting the scene. What have we been doing at Deloitte? Whilst I can't talk specifics, that's all very top secret at Deloitte, at a high level, we've been developing these conversational AI agents to tackle some ambitious goals. I've put an asterisk here just to make sure we're all on the same page of what we mean by these conversational AI agents. So essentially, it's ChatGPT, but it's your own version. So based on our own set of documents, programmed to perform in a certain way to achieve quite specific goals. So what were we trying to do? A few examples here. So we were trying to improve entire product teams' approaches to digital deliveries on government projects, so they could easily identify best practice in the Bible in government for product teams, the service manual. And they could ask questions like, I'm creating a new assisted digital support route. Can you tell me how to do it? Who's done it before? What are the key steps? So, transformative, right? Another example, drastically reducing the time that teams spend on responding to bids for our clients by providing access to case studies, partnerships, sorts of information that we have internally, but it's usually difficult to find. And then thirdly, helping project teams across all of our clients embed responsible and ethical practices in their work based on a responsible framework we've developed at Deloitte. We really love frameworks at Deloitte, so I won't go into that too much detail. But as you can see, we had high hopes from these agents. And naturally, as user-centered designers, we were eager to get these ideas in front of users. But there was no seat for us at the table. And I think actually I've been quite lucky in that I specialize on public sector services, where user-centered design and research is very much at the heart of product development. And I think I've always taken that for granted. And recently I've been like, oh, not everyone really gets this. But I think this is particularly prominent in this new space where everyone's getting carried away with this new technology and what it can do. And it's all about proof of concepts and proving what the algorithms can do. And really, no one's thinking about what is going to really guarantee success, and that's whether people are going to adopt these things. I just wanted to bring in some quotes from the project I'm actually on at the moment for a client. So we're creating an AI-powered search tool. Won't go into specifics, but I really needed to just get this off my chest and vent to an audience that are hopefully on the same page as me. But these were the actual quotes I heard from the team. So we have 6 weeks to develop the proof of concept. And they said, well, we can only afford you for 5 days. You're basically creating some screens. So, you can do that. Anything outside of desk, right? It's just UI. I was like, okay, deep breath. Or we don't need to speak to users. We can just use proxies. Let's just get into developing the technology. And then we started talking about, we think there's specific terms that people use that we need to bring into, the experience, the interface. They were like, we don't care about language. Just get on and create some screens. So that's been difficult, and I've really had to learn to calm, stay patient, and try and kind of bring them along that journey. But it has been difficult. Anyway, back to the agents. Just got that off my chest. So with the agents themselves, we did actually manage to win the battle just before we went to launch, so we didn't have much time, but we got in there, we managed to set up some interviews, and we started to put these concepts in front of people. As you can see from this very creative image, what we found was not that pretty. So I'm going to take you through 5 key challenges. There's actually a lot, but these were the prominent ones that we found time and time again as we test this kind of conversational experience. Based on, I think I mentioned, it's been over 100 interviews now, and we can continue to learn every week. So this first challenge is how to start. So as Glenn was talking through, in this new experience, we are confronted with what we're calling a blank slate. So you start off with an empty input box, and it's just totally up to the user to put in what they want. People don't know what they want. They don't know what they can achieve. And you see very unhelpful calls to action, like, ask me anything. I'm like, okay, what could that be? And these interviews have just been so eye-opening, especially as someone who is using things like ChatGPT every day. I rely on them heavily. To see the reality of how most people are not even familiar with this and don't know how to start. So some quotes from our interviews, I think, speak for themselves. Do I just put in keywords? So someone then just going on to put in customer service. Can't read this one here. I get a bit of anxiety where it feels like you have to nail the input. I'm having those feelings like I'm talking to the Amazon helper. So this one, really recognizing how daunted people feel and that emotional experience they're going through as we put this new way of interacting with information in front of them. And then do I speak to it as if I was talking to someone else? So people don't know if they can just have a conversation, how they frame their inputs as well. Secondly, this challenge of having to master prompt engineering. Again, similar to what Glenn was saying, it feels so at odds with what we've been trying to achieve with user-centered design and UX in trying to create the most intuitive experiences possible for people. And now we're saying, actually, if you want to use this, you've got to master this whole new skill that people have never done before. Oh, and by the way, then you'll be able to use it. It just doesn't really seem to make sense. And what is stopping a lot of people from even starting to try and use this is they don't know how to start with prompting itself, and they think that it takes a long time to do that. So I haven't had the time to learn how to do it properly. I think it's just down to my own capability of being able to do good prompts, so people have very low confidence if they haven't done this before. Okay, I'll give it a go, but I'm probably going to ask it in the wrong way. So already they're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to get what I need because I don't have the skills that are needed. And I'm really hoping that something changes in this space in terms of how we design these experiences to make that more intuitive. There's things that we're exploring, which we'll go into. Contextual relevance. The third challenge is not really recognizing how we can apply this kind of technology to the actual tasks that we do every day. So it's probably something a lot of you have encountered. It's quite basic, generic training in Gen AI or prompting. But without that contextual relevance, it's difficult to know how we actually use it. So whenever I talk to people more generally about using things like ChatGPT, we've got our own internal version that we only ever use. People say things like, it's not really relevant to me. it doesn't really apply to our work, or the opportunity just hasn't come up to use it yet. And then when I go into it, 9 times out of 10, there's definitely things they could be using which will really help them, but they just don't know how. Fourth challenge, I actually wish I put this one first, because this is my favorite. The solution people love the most is the status quo. And as UXers, you're probably all very familiar with this, but I feel it's particularly relevant in this space. I actually went to a good talk recently by one of our colleagues, Ed, and he was saying that every project is a cultural change project. And I feel like this is just bang on the mark with this technology. It's a whole new shift in how we're interacting with these things. And as creatures of habit, we like to stick with our own current ways of doing things unless we see a real, clear, tangible benefit up front to really convince us to change. And this is what we're seeing in our interviews. So a lot of people talk about using this as maybe a starting point, but then they want to go back to their usual ways of doing things. So then they want to go back to Google. So I might use it as a starting point, but then I'd have a quick Google. I'd want to go back to the documents to check. Well, the whole point is that you don't have to check the documents anymore because this should do it for you. They want to go back. Or you'd want to write that bit yourself. So actually, that real challenge of changing how people work is not going to happen overnight. And finally, this is something I've been really guilty of. It's people feeling ashamed and almost embarrassed to admit that they're using this to make them more efficient and to enhance the work that they're doing. So we were talking about this last night, actually. We were all saying, oh, we rely on it so much, but almost in a kind of guilty way. And I was like, guys, we need to own this. This is great that we're thinking about being so efficient with this technology and so creative, but I'm still struggling to do it myself. And I think it's because of these sentiments. I'm just one of those people that likes to use their brain. People think they're not using their brain if they're using this. It's making people lazy. And then this one at the top, had this in an interview a couple of weeks ago, and someone was like, oh, do you use any of this kind of technology? And they were like, yeah, this is really terrible. And he almost kind of hesitated, but then he told me. I started using ChatGPT to generate bedtime stories for my kids. And I was like, that is so cool. That's such a creative way of using it. That's amazing that you thought of doing that. But he was really ashamed about it. He was like, oh, you're recording this. I was like, that's great, own it. So I think it's, challenging ourselves to own it and be like, wow, look at what it can do. People have spent all this time, all this money and resources on creating this technology. Let's make the most. So why do we need to get this right? And why have I spent the last year trying to understand how we really tackle these barriers? Why is it important? Well, I know everyone's talking about AI. We know there's huge potential. But I just wanted to bring one example based on some calculations that I actually did. I'm not going to go through exactly how we got there. We can talk about it at the break. But 2.25 billion is what we figured HMRC could save in just 1 year by introducing conversational AI agents to their customer service function. At a high level, this is due to the fact that it could quickly pass through lots of information and provide these personalized responses and do a lot more than just a few representatives and be available 24/7. So, the opportunities are huge. And this is why it's worth, trying to stick with this battle. And also, we know that bad design results in suboptimal products. But I think this is particularly important in the AI space when they're behaving in unpredictable ways. Just a few examples here. I'm sure you're aware of some of these disasters, such as the DPD chatbot that ended up swearing at a customer, or Snapchat's My AI agent, which was designed to summarize the content of people's messages. Unsurprisingly, this was seen as pretty intrusive, and user ratings plummeted, simply because they hadn't tested this idea with users. They just went ahead and created it and launched it. And with the DPD chatbot, of course, a lot of it's down to the technology and hallucinations, but maybe also if they'd just done some sessions and thought about how people might use it, the kind of questions they might ask, they might have thought more carefully about the guardrails they needed to put into place. Also, I think we have a ethical responsibility here in thinking about this generative AI divide. which does seem inevitable. Even just at work, when I look at those who are making the most of this technology and those that aren't, there is a big divide that's already building. And this was an interesting stat from a recent survey of over 4,000 adults, where 50% claimed that they had no knowledge or limited knowledge of generative AI. So this is 50% of the users of your product, most likely. This is the reality. So how do we bring them on that journey? So what can we do? Back to this idea of every project being a cultural change project. From my interviews, we've identified some key attributes amongst individuals that we feel particularly inform people's interactions with this new conversational experience. And from that, we've developed our AI archetypes to help us think about what might certain groups with certain capabilities think and respond to this technology. So a few factors we've got here. We've got AI literacy. So really, back to that prompting, how skilled are people in these prompts, in these conversations? Self-confidence, which is very different, because some people say their literacy is very high, and they seem quite confident, but then it soon becomes clear that actually they still have quite limited prompting capabilities. But it does impact, how much they might start exploring this technology at least. Adventurousness, related to confidence, but again, kind of that curiosity point. Are people just going to go in there and explore? Some might, most probably won't. Buy-in as well. So how much do people actually trust the outputs, which is going to be a huge driver to how much they're going to use it. And then persistence. So we know with this as well, it's about follow-ups. It's about asking a question in a different way, or regenerating a response, or trying something new. And that's very much part of the experience as well. Also within these archetypes, we considered things like people's prompting styles. So that can range from a very simple Google search query, where we're entering more keyword terms, to pinpointing, where people get that prompt right straight away and they get exactly the output they're looking for. But they're more often things like expanding techniques, where we start off with something, we drill down. But these interactions, again, can look very different just with that one tool. So thinking about these archetypes, trying to bring these user groups to life with the whole product team. We even use a bit of AI art to try and make them jazzy and get people to actually think about who these people are. Secondly, exploring a hybrid approach to accommodate people's shifting mental models. So this is a very basic example. I know there's a lot more you can do, but I just want to use this to illustrate the point of people aren't going to adopt this new way of tackling a problem or finding information overnight. So what we need to be thinking about is a hybrid approach where they could use a traditional method. So for example, just going to files they know, searching in the traditional way that they're used to, versus being able to enter a natural language query. So the ambition here is you might provide access to the traditional way, and then as they start to go into that platform, maybe they'll start exploring. And bit by bit, you can bring them over to a new, more effective way. Providing context-specific examples with clear guidance. So this is where I was mentioning there's a lot of generic training, but it's not really specific to what we're doing every day. So particularly in the user research field, we're developing prompts that will help people with specific tasks. So all they need to do is click on that prompt, and the agent itself will ask them a series of questions to help them get to the output that they need. So for example, the discussion guide is programmed to ask the researcher for their objectives, for how long their interview is, for who their target audience is, and then based on best practice guidance from templates that we have, it will then generate a discussion guide that is hopefully helpful for them. And we've done this for key areas where we feel, actually, do you know what? We have templates for a reason. We understand the best practice. Where can we speed this up? Also, the hope with this is people can actually see how we've created these prompts. And in this way, it's upskilling people in how they could create their own as well. Another thing we were talking about at dinner last night, we had some great conversations, is inspiring others and spreading the word, so learning by osmosis. And whilst this might not be quite as quick as other approaches. I do think this is the most powerful. So it's embodying the use of this technology, showing people how you're using it and inspiring them to do the same and spread the word. So sharing this message that I got from someone on my last project, saying, thanks for letting me get involved, it's been so interesting. And now I know how to do sampling for UR, something I could never do before, and now I can do it. And everyone's excited on my team by how much easier it is to be able to do these things. That was really cool. And I thought, actually, that's made a huge impact. And now look at him, he's trying to advocate people to use them as well and get the word out there. So that's what I really think we need to do as well, is our responsibility to show what are these examples, let's bring them to life, let's communicate them. So lastly, the power of curiosity. So this is what I'm trying to embrace every day as well. So challenging myself. I know there's so much that this technology can do that I have no idea about, so I'm trying to be as creative as possible. Or when I try and do a new task, I think, okay, could ChatGPT help me? One example I had the other day is I'm not very good at being creative with prompts to create an image that I want. So these are some prompts that I used for my presentation. The first one was just me giving it a go. So create a cartoon image of a table packed full of people sitting on chairs to emphasize no empty seats at the table. It was pretty basic, and the image isn't great, let's be honest. And then I was like, oh wait, I could just ask ChatGPT to create a prompt that would actually give me the image that I'm really looking for. So for the second one, I said, what prompt could I use to create an image of things not living up to expectations? And as you can see, it's much more creative. So we're talking about a surreal scene, an elaborate gift box, a vibrant, enticing exterior of the box, which I wouldn't have come up with, and quite a cool picture. So I liked that example myself. And the last example that I want to leave you with today is really using this technology not simply to just enhance existing processes, but to challenge ourselves to think about how can we do things totally differently in a way that's going to bring a lot more value. So I had a request last week. We're starting a big new digital transformation project. And my friend was like, hey, we need to create 28 service blueprints on this project. How could we use AI to help us? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, there's probably lots of things we could do. We've got a template, great, we can just bring that in. And then I was like, wait, do we need to create these blueprints? What are they for? Are these templates any good? What are the teams actually using them for? Are they just going to go in a file? Do we need them at all? What else could we do? Maybe we could just get video clips that demonstrate key points along the journey, or let's just rethink this. And this is something we did specifically with a research method when trying to test the technology of AI agents. So it gets a bit meta here, bear with me. So when we were starting off thinking about new ideas, we thought, okay, how do we tackle the idea of a very basic prototype, which is just, as we know them, on a screen, a page with an empty text box. We were asking people what they might ask this kind of agent. But a lot of it is about that conversational experience. So how do we capture the kind of questions they might ask in a more realistic way? And I thought, actually, this was in the middle of the night on a Saturday. It was quite sad of me, actually, but I suddenly woke up and I was like, oh my God, I actually think ChatGPT could be the prototype. So then I started exploring at 3 a.m. Okay, could you do this thing for me? And it was really quite exciting because I was like, oh, I've just created a prototype in 2 minutes just by asking them to emulate the kind of agent that I want to create. So I think it's easiest to explain this just by playing this. Hopefully it will work. So I said, I want to create an agent. This example I've just done as an HR agent. It helps people navigate internal policy documents. And I'm saying, I want to do some research. Can you just pretend to be this agent and make up some dummy data so I can test how people might respond to it? And they were like, yeah, sure, I can be the agent for you. Just give me the system prompt. So I gave this, you are a helpful assistant. And then they came back with some dummy data. Then it meant I could set that all up, bring in my first participant for research, and explain, okay, this is the scenario, we've got this agent, what might you ask it? So they can come in and say, what should I do if I'm sick? So we're like, okay, that's the kind of thing they might ask. We can see how they respond to the kind of information they're getting even if it's not the right one, it does a pretty good job of giving some dummy data. And then we can just see how that conversation goes. You know, we're not just showing them one blank slate screen. We can just explore what are their expectations, how are they finding this, what kind of prompting styles are they using, and this becomes your research session. So we run the session, then I say, thanks very much, that's the end. And then I'm like, oh wait, but also they could probably help me think about what did we learn in this experience. So I'm like, hey, it's me again. Could you just analyze what they asked, tell me what were their needs, what were their prompting styles, and how could we improve the system prompt that I gave you initially to maybe reflect their needs? And it was pretty good. It did pretty well. And again, that was just through challenging myself to think one step further. Okay, can it be the prototype? Oh wait, can it also help me with analysis? It was pretty cool. So that's all I've got for us today. I think I just want to leave you with two things. First of all, make sure that we are the voices in the room as the rest of the product team are getting carried away with the shiny tech. We're reminding them about the actual users and what will drive success. And secondly, be curious in everything that you do. Thanks very much.